Welcome to Parlor Talks. If you're an owner or manager of a label, folding carton, flexible packaging, or corrugated packaging printing company, this podcast is for you. We'll dive into the latest trends, innovations, strategies, and best practices shaping the package printing industry.
Welcome to Parlor Talks. I'm Kaylee Vandewater, Associate Content and Online Editor for Packaging Impressions, and your host for today's episode. This is a very special episode today because it's March and we're celebrating Women's History Month. Today, I have with me Katie Austing, Vice President of Customer Experience and Sustainability at KDV Label, who's also on the Regulatory Affairs Committee for Tail 9. So, Katie, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk with you.
Yeah, I am too.
Celebrate the month.
Yes. So, like we just mentioned, it's Women's History Month. So I want to hear about your journey through the label industry as a woman. But first, I want to know, what originally drew you to the label industry? And did you picture your career going this way when you started?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever talked to anybody who thought they would be in the role they are. So no, I did not envision working in the label industry and packaging industry. A lot of what I studied in school, marketing and design, really kind of geared us towards retail and, working at a brand. So to kind of take a step back and work for brands is really kind of an interesting twist in a career. But actually, my career started in professional services. So I came out of school and went straight into accounting marketing, which is riveting. Another step where I never thought I'd be marketing for accountants, because who knew? Mm-hmm. But that role actually, I met some of my greatest mentors and some of my most precious connections within, my career. Mm-hmm. And that has kind of panned out across, my career path. So getting into packaging really came from those roots, because my first boss out of school knew the owner of KDV Label, and we connected. She needed to work with him on a job description for their first marketer ever in 37 years of business, which is kind of an amazing story in of itself. And, we kind of chatted about the market and what marketing looked like at that point in time. And a couple months later, she came back and she handed me the job description and said, "Hey, I wrote this for you. I want you to apply." And never had I ever thought I would actually kind of wind up in the role, and here I am.
Yeah, that's super cool. So obviously that felt like you were funneled towards a specific destiny, maybe. But did you ever have a moment in your career where you realized that this is where you truly belong, like in this industry?
Absolutely. Knowing nothing about it and coming in not too long ago, I really ended up being at a point where, I had always had to learn a lot about the product, and it was always the best part of my job. So that was something that lured me in. But when I realized that packaging, and especially labels, is a lot about creativity meeting technology and craftsmanship, that's where I knew I was like, oh, this is the best product to sell and really put out there in the market. It just marries so many things that I'm passionate about. Mm-hmm. Including that sustainability element that came into play at that point in time too. So, I knew probably about a year in that this was exactly where I needed to be when I needed to be, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know we maybe alluded to this a little bit, but can you talk about someone who really championed you in your career as you started out, and why that support mattered so much?
Of course. I'll go back to my first boss. Her name's Sarah, and she really kind of showed how leadership and getting your hands dirty on a day-to-day basis can really come together. And she gave me a lot of freedom to learn and grow within the role that I had at that time. So one thing that she always did was kept in check with me and in touch even when we didn't work together anymore, and really took on that mentorship role, which is so, so important, especially as women, no matter what industry we're in. Um, Not only female mentors, but male mentors, because a lot of times what I'll do is check with them and say, okay, this is how I'm thinking about this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just give me a feedback about, the, how do other people think about it, right? So, from that perspective, I would say getting to KDV and having, a whole new team of mentors here. There's more male mentorship here than female, and I really appreciated their ability to kind of see things from a different light. So I think it goes two ways. One, gut checking with someone who's in the same career path with you as, am I thinking about this correctly? Is this how you would approach it? And another one of someone who has a totally different view of business or, your role in a company, and gut checking with them as well.
Gotcha. So when you look at the industry today, where do you see the most meaningful progress for women, and where do we still have work to do?
That's a great question. I think there are so many groups, especially springing up within like TLMIs and the FTAs of the world, that really help. And PMMI actually has a great group for women. That there are so much more ways to connect with women in the same roles. So you can compare notes and ask them how they approach, find those mentors. And even if it's not an official mentorship, at least you have a group that is in the same boat with you, and you can check at any given point. So I think networking has gotten a lot stronger, and I think the support from the organizations overall is incredible. I think there's a little space within the like day-to-day activities of just making sure we're always in the loop, and basically not being afraid to bring out the idea you might think is obvious, or thinking you're off base in some sort of way. Having that confidence really in the midst of a big group of probably male-dominated group, and having the confidence to present your ideas in that venue.
Gotcha. And I mean, you mentioned some of the industry associations, and I know we mentioned that you're part of TLMI. Can you talk a little bit about your experience working with TLMI?
Oh yeah, I'd love to. Actually, I went to my first committee summit. I probably had been like 2 months into my role at KDV, so brand new, learning, and I joined to learn about more about sustainability, because coming on at KDV, my role included making sure that we were moving forward on our sustainability journey. So I had some learning to do, and TLMI seems like a great place to do it, and that was not they did not fall short of that for sure. So that committee summit, there was a new committee born. It was called the Resource. Actually, it had a totally different name at the time, but it ended up being the Sustainability Resources Committee in the end of it. And our job was to basically understand where converters were struggling with knowledge around sustainability, and produce resources for them to use or learn from, and actually either get started or move along on their sustainability journey. So over the course of a few years, I actually co-chaired that committee with a couple different people over time, and we were able to produce some great resources, and we ended up getting a lot of those published either by marketing or within the other committees there. But that basically furthered the whole nother evolution of that committee, and now we basically run projects. So it's kind of a cool thing to have done. So with the dissolve of that committee, I joined the Regulatory Affairs Committee, again on a learning path, and then hoping to contribute as much as possible.
Yeah. Awesome. So how has that kind of like helped strengthen your career in the industry and as a woman in the industry?
Yeah, I think it builds on that connection, right? So, I found from the very start of my career that meeting people out and around your business, your organization, and within your industry, even around your industry from other industries, is just incredibly helpful to give you perspective on whatever you're working on, to phone a friend should you ever have some need or some problem you're working through that you just need that other perspective on. So that's really what I see in TLMI is, one, they know exactly most everyone there is a converter or a supplier, so everybody understands the business and has run into some sort of similar situation that you could ever have. So it's just always great to have those connections with the industry. You form trusting relationships and can bounce ideas off of one another, and it's so powerful. It helps not only move your career or your organization forward, it moves our whole industry forward.
So you've been in this industry for a bit now, and when you entered, there may have been some challenges for you as a woman entering this industry, and like as you mentioned, a lot of male voices kind of dominating the conversation in some instances. What sort of a challenge you faced at the start of your career as a woman that might not be something someone new to the industry today would experience?
That's also a great question. I think it's interesting because I've been in the industry, I feel like, for a very short amount of time compared to so many others. I'm in my fourth year, right? So
Yeah.
4 or 5 years, and I can see the progress because there are so many strong female voices in the industry and so well respected, no matter the gender, that I have a great appreciation, like many of us do, for those who have kind of gone trailblazed for females coming into the industry now. I think some of the challenges that I saw they may have had was even just having a voice, or being seen as someone who might be able to contribute in an area that isn't typically female dominated. So, like the HRs and like I started in marketing, and that really is a female dominated area. And then when I started getting into the account management and the things, they're kind of a hub. So they deal a lot more with production, which is more male dominated. And it was interesting because just the way our brains work make us think about things differently. So, we would have ideas, or we would have different, perspectives on things that were so valuable, but a lot of times I saw people holding them back. Right? So, I think being comfortable and being welcome into a venue to share those ideas, even with like the production side of things, or areas where, it doesn't have a lot of female support. I think that confidence is building, and it's so exciting to see because it's just improving every area of the business, and also learning from, perspectives that we would have never heard before. So it's very exciting to kind of see that all melding together, and that gender differential like becoming less and less and less.
Great. I guess kind of maybe tying into that, I was wondering, how do you think women leaders have helped reshape the culture of the label industry over the course of your career?
So the culture of the label industry is interesting because it's very industrial, craftsmanship. We're doing some heavy lifting, and I see it more so on the production side. We now have female operators running flexo presses, and honestly, it's kind of interesting because there's a little bit of competition there, right? Like the male operators versus the female operators, and I've had meetings where we're talking about, KPIs and making sure that, we're keeping up with where our goals are.
Right.
And And our production supervisors will say the ladies are just outdoing the guys, bar none this today or whatever the timeline is. And it's I think we're raising the bar. I think females are definitely coming in and adding an element of detail orientation, or just, they're very focused on hitting those KPIs and raising the bar in their niche. So, and that's just a good example of, guys noticing that, ladies can do that as well, and they might have a couple of things they can learn from. So it's great.
Definitely. So I wanted to hear maybe a piece of advice that you wish someone had given you earlier in your career. Something that you've learned that it would have been good to know at the beginning.
Well, one that is a little bit, I guess I saw it paying off right away, is don't put your blinders onto just your role. So having come from the professional services area, I didn't know what accountants did. I didn't know how that played out. And I had to learn, because thought leadership was a huge marketing element within that industry. So I had to dive in. I had to understand what they were talking about with their customers and things like that. And that really brought out my curiosity, I guess. If you talk in terms, KDV has a core value of curiosity. And what it does is basically just makes you ask questions and think about, things differently. We don't always have to do them the same. Or also, if I learn about somebody else's role, how can I apply that in my world as well? How is that going to help me, kind of move forward in either my career path or in my day-to-day projects, my day-to-day work. So I would say, for sure, one of the things that I learned quickly is make sure your blinders aren't on and you're observing things around you that could impact how you approach something on any given day. The other that I wish I would have learned sooner, and I probably am still learning, is that even the simplest of thoughts or the simplest of ideas are not always obvious to others in the room. So a lot of times I would sit in a meeting and I'd be like, oh, I have this idea, but it's somebody else. I'm sure they're just taking it for granted, or it's an assumption that everybody has in the room and it doesn't need to be said, right? And over time, I found I would ask the question of, did you think of this? Or what do you think about this idea? And they were the most rudimentary ideas in my head, but to others, they were brilliant, right?
Yeah.
So they were just so simple. I never thought that anybody would find any value in them. But it turns out that, I just thought about it differently. So what I thought was simple was completely a game changer to somebody else. So I guess the point of advice is, don't always think that your ideas are not valuable. Make sure you're asking or telling people what you're thinking and confirming that, everybody's also thinking the same thing. Yeah, don't take your ideas for granted. They're valuable and should be heard.
Yeah. What's one skill you think young professionals in the label industry should prioritize right now?
Oh, that's a great question. I, hands down, think it's building cross-functional relationships. The more, kind of alluding back to, creating that knowledge base, not keeping your blinders on, creating those relationships across departments, across organizations, just helps you broaden your scope, broaden your view, and that so applies to your everyday dealings. You'll see how that applies to even the most mundane of emails, knowing who the stakeholders are in any given situation, or coming up with a strategy that not only helps your project, but the person's project next to you. It's just such a valuable thing to be able to bounce ideas off of other departments, because they're seeing things differently than you are.
So I also wanted to hear kind of your future-looking perspective. What excites you the most about the future of labels?
I have always been a technology nerd. So you know what's going to come out of my mouth next is AI. It is so exciting. Very interesting of thinking through the power of that technology and being able to apply it not only to repetitive functions, but how can it be the power tool of your day-to-day? So I'm very excited to dive deeper into that. I think the challenge with that is fitting that into your projects or your day, fitting in, applying it, and then beyond that, getting people comfortable with it, right? I think it's a scary thing for a lot of people. It's kind of like email when it came to fruition, and people are like, that's going to die. I don't think AI is going to die. I think it's the next email evolution, and we're all going to be have 2 years probably so comfortable with it. We're trying to put it in everything. But nonetheless, I think technology is really growing substantially in labels. I mean, you look at RFID, you look at even just QR codes and being able to scan and open up anything and any label. That's some very valuable real estate that brands are using beautifully. So I think between kind of all those elements of technology coming together, we're going to get to some really cool places for labels.
That's awesome. I love your outlook there.
Thank you.
I think we're about out of time today, Katie. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoy your Women's History Month.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks.